to do hard studies to make the case of the extent to which racial profiling is occurring in our country. But it's also why I'm so proud that Al Gore has said two things. First, we would issue, if we're fortunate enough to be elected, an executive order prohibiting racial profiling. And secondly, the first Civil Rights Act legislation we would send to Congress would be a national ban on racial profiling. It is just wrong. It is un-American. And to think that in the 21st century this kind of nonsense is still going on, we've got to stop it. And the only way to stop it is through the law. I mean, the law, after all, is meant to express our values and our aspirations for our society. And our values are violently contradicted by the kind of racial profiling that I know exists. And I just had a friend a while ago, Bernie, who works in the government, works at the White House, African-American, stopped, surrounded by police for no other cause that anyone can determine than the color of his skin. That can't be in America anymore.
Mr. Secretary.
Well, Bernie, I'd like to answer your question to the best of my ability, but I don't think I can understand fully what it would be like. Try hard to put myself in that position and imagine what it would have been like, but of course I've always been part of the majority. I've never been part of a minority group, but it has to be a horrible experience. It's the sense of anger and frustration and rage that would go with knowing that the only reason you were stopped, the only reason you were arrested was because of your color of your skin, would make me extraordinarily angry. And I'm not sure how I would respond. I think that we have to recognize that while we've made enormous progress in the U.S. in racial relations, and we have come a very long way, we still have a long way to go. That we still have not only the problems we're talking about here tonight in terms of the problems you mentioned of profiling, but beyond that, we still have the achievement gap in education, income differentials, differences in lifespan. We still have, I think, a society that where we haven't done enough yet to live up to that standard that we'd all like to live up to, I think, in terms of equality of opportunity, that we judge people as individuals, that, as Martin Luther King said, we ought to judge people on the content of their character instead of the color of their skin. I would hope that we can continue to make progress in that regard in the years ahead.
Senator, sexual orientation. Should a male who loves a male and a female who loves a female have all the constitutional rights enjoyed by every American citizen?
A very current and difficult question, and I've been thinking about it, and I want to explain what my thoughts have been. Maybe I should begin this answer by going back to the beginning of the country and the Declaration of Independence, which says right there at the outset that all of us are created equal and that we're endowed not by any bunch of politicians or philosophers, but by our Creator with those inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. At the beginning of our history, that promise, that ideal, was not realized or experienced by all Americans, but over time since then, we have extended the orbit of that promise. And in our time, at the frontier of that effort is extending those kinds of rights to gay and lesbian Americans who are citizens of this country and children of the same awesome God just as much as any of the rest of us are. That's why I have been an original co-sponsor of the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, which aims to prevent gay and lesbian Americans who are otherwise qualified from being discriminated against in the workplace. And I've sponsored other pieces of legislation and taken other actions that carry out that ideal. The question you pose is a difficult one for this reason. It confronts or challenges the traditional notion of marriage as being limited to a heterosexual couple, which I support. But I must say I'm thinking about this because I have friends who are in gay and lesbian partnerships who have said to me, isn't it unfair that we don't have similar legal rights to inheritance, to visitation when one of the partners is ill, to health care benefits? And that's why I'm thinking about it, and my mind is open to taking some action that will address those elements of unfairness while respecting the traditional religious and civil institution of marriage?
Mr. Secretary.
This is a tough one, Bernie. The fact of the matter is we live in a free society, and freedom means freedom for everybody. We don't get to choose and shouldn't be able to choose and say, you get to live free, but you don't. And I think that means that people should be free to enter into any kind of relationship they want to enter into. It's really no one else's business in terms of trying to regulate or prohibit behavior in that regard. The next step then, of course, is the question you ask of whether or not there ought to be some kind of official sanction, if you will, of the relationship, or if these relationships should be treated the same way a conventional marriage is. That's a tougher problem. That's not a slam dunk. I think the fact of the matter, of course, is that matters are regulated by the states. I think different states are likely to come to different conclusions, and that's appropriate. I don't think there should necessarily be a federal policy in this area. I try to be open-minded about it as much as I can and tolerant of those relationships. And like Joe, I'm also wrestle with the extent to which there ought to be legal sanction of those relationships. I think we ought to do everything we can to tolerate and accommodate whatever kind of relationships people want to enter into.
It occurs to me that your moderator has committed a boo-boo. I asked the racial profiling question of you. You responded, and then I asked the sexual orientation question of you. I should not have done that in terms of rotation. Gentlemen, I apologize.
We forgive you.
Thank you.
You're human like we are.
Mr. Secretary, Vice President of the United States of America, what would you bring to the job that your opponent wouldn't?
We clearly come from different political perspectives. Joe is a Democrat from New England. I'm a Republican from the West, from Wyoming. And I think that weighs into it to some extent. Clearly, we're both in the positions we're in because of our personal relationships with our principals. I think the areas that I would bring are the things that Governor Bush emphasized when he picked me. That I had been White House Chief of Staff and ran the White House under President Ford, that I had spent 10 years in the House, 8 of that in the leadership, served as Secretary of Defense, and then had significant experience now in the private sector. And I think that where there are differences between Joe and myself in terms of background and experience, I clearly have spent a lot of time in executive positions, running large organizations, both in private business as well as in government. And that's a set of qualifications that Governor Bush found attractive when he selected me. I'll leave it at that.
Senator.
Bernie, I have great respect for Dick Cheney. I don't agree with a lot of things he said in this campaign, but I have great respect for him. He was a very distinguished Secretary of Defense, and I don't have anything negative to say about him. So I want to say, with the humility that is required to respond to this statement, that I think what I would bring to the office of the Vice Presidency is a lifetime's experience. Growing up in a working class family, having the opportunity to go to a great public school system, then to go on to college, and then to be drawn really by President Kennedy as